Welcome to the Jazz Notes podcast. I'm Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
It is Black Tuesday. It's the day after the NBA Draft Lottery, where the Utah Jazz did not win. In fact, they got the most likely outcome, but the worst outcome. They fell to number 5. And I guess technically it wasn't the most likely outcome. It was the most likely pick.
Yes.
They were more likely to end up in the top 4.
True.
Actually, they had a 52% chance of landing in the top 4. 48% chance of falling to 5, but they did fall to 5. As soon as the Wizards popped up at 6, you knew that the Jazz had fallen to 5 and fallen those 4 spots. So a pretty horrendous night for the Utah Jazz. And if you were on social media, or if you're a Jazz fan, you felt it.
Yeah.
You definitely saw it. You can find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at C Holt Sports. Read us at KSLSports.com. Appreciate it if you're watching the video. If you watched it last week, we are on YouTube now. We've always been on YouTube, but there's like actual video, and you can see us talking.
Yes.
So appreciate everyone who did that. As always, we will talk about what happened last night. We're not going to get super deep into like who are the Jazz going to draft at 5. That's what I think the next 6 weeks are for. But we will talk about what happened last night and then a bunch of mailbag questions as expected.
Yes.
So I want to start with, I guess, what happened last night. The Jazz fell to 5 and the vitriol that has come out. And vitriol maybe is too harsh a word. The frustration, the anger, the sadness that we have seen online has maybe exceeded even what my expectations were, and way worse than what there was last year, way worse than what there was 2 years ago. Do you have a theory on why we saw that?
Yes, I saw a lot of people leading up to the draft. Like we even got questions that were like preparing for the Jazz to get 5th, who looks good there,
right?
Questions like that. But it was so much worse than I was expecting. There was sell the team comments. There was like ownership needs to sell, like change comments, all sorts of stuff. A
lot of fire Danny, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, and like I get it. It's frustrating, and I think most of that frustration actually comes from who ended up in the top 3, more so than the Jazz falling at 5, because I think most people acknowledged that the Jazz most likely individual outcome was the 5th pick.
So you think if the Wizards got 1, Charlotte got 2, whoever, the Bulls get 3, whatever, and the Jazz get 4 or 5, you think it's a different reaction?
Yes, absolutely. I think that with Dallas getting it, like it was a snap of a finger as people were like, oh, the draft is rigged. Like getting the pick was a part of the Luka trade back in February, which is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think that contributed to it a lot.
And then the Spurs, who always win, and the Jazz have not had a lot of luck, and that's one of the Jazz's rivals, not their main rival, but one of the Jazz rivals. I think that helped. I think you're right about that. I do think the entire season, and look, we talked about this. The season was also about developing the young players, getting the guys out there, which is why, in retrospect, losing Taylor Hendricks in Game 3 was actually pretty catastrophic.
Yeah.
You know, because he was one of your top prospects and wanting to get him to develop and giving him a full season to do that. Missing out on that, I think, added extra value to the lottery, right? Because now you're missing out on one of those pieces you're developing. Next year is about that a lot as well. And then you have to figure out, you know, who you're going to draft on top of that. It's just, it's a lot of stacking now of young players developing. And I think a lot of Jazz fans at this point hoped they were starting to get out of the rebuild. And last night did not give you a ticket out. It just didn't. It's just another part of the rebuild and more deconstruction. And I think ideally, I guess that's what Cooper Flagg or even a Dylan Harper would have provided, is the roadmap. At least you think the roadmap. There's no guarantee that Dylan Harper's the guy. I do think Cooper Flagg is. There's no guarantee Dylan Harper is. But I guess you also were robbed of that. So you lose Taylor early, and then of course you don't have this top lottery pick, and it just feels like you're still in a very similar spot to where you were 12 months ago. It almost feels like you reset to 12 months ago.
Yes.
And I think that might be what's frustrating for Jazz fans.
And I totally get that frustration, but I think that, like, again, in our job, we have to sort of peel back the fan aspect a little bit. But for me, like, for an example, I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. Basically, since 2016, we've been a 7-10 win team.
Right.
And to me, that is more frustrating than actually bottoming out and having a chance to get one of these top picks, like have a chance at Cam Ward or whoever it is.
Yeah.
And that's what the Jazz did. And there's been a lot of frustration this year. And I get that frustration. It sucks to see your team lose games ultimately. But at the same time, I think it's pretty obvious that it will benefit them more long term.
I would think so, as long as you hit on the pick.
Yeah.
Now, I think the interesting part of that, and I want to get to an article you wrote last night, which I think was very appropriate, and what I think the show was going to be based around today. But I also want to say, and maybe this is the PR from the Jazz, and I don't mean their public relations team, but just kind of, Ryan Smith going on Pat McAfee and saying, like, why not now? Why not us? We feel like, we're in a good spot. I almost think there was too much buildup for the value of winning this lottery. Now, Cooper Flagg is one of the guys, the same way Wemby has transformed the Spurs. I'm not trying to pretend that like Cooper Flagg is not this huge prize. He is.
Yeah.
But that it felt like suddenly, even though it's not the case, look at all the assets the Jazz have acquired, look at the number of young players they already have, veterans that they can trade. The Jazz have a lot of investments all over. All of a sudden, it felt like everything in the franchise was riding on the outcome of last night's draft. And so the reaction has been like, well, all of that stuff is now meaningless and worthless.
Yes.
And it isn't. None of those have changed at all, really. There's relative value. If you have Cooper, then all of a sudden other things make a little bit more sense. But none of those are gone. None of that has changed. You did add a top 5 draft pick, to your asset treasure trove or your cash that you're going to be able to work with. And that's still true.
Yes.
But it did feel like the build-up, the sacrifice of a season, all of the losses down the stretch, the goofy injury reports were about winning last night, and then they lost last night. So it felt like all the investment from fans was thrown out the window, and I understand that. Also, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
Like, the one thing I think we have gotten away from, and I don't mean we in Utah who cover the Utah Jazz, I mean in general in sports, is like, the value of the fun of sports is why we watch it.
Yes.
We like the aspect, we like the winning, but we also like young players developing, or we like the funny things, or, whatever it is. And like, this is not fun.
No.
Rebuilding's not fun. Losing the lottery is not fun. There's just not a lot of fun around the Utah Jazz right now. And I will be curious if they pivot to getting back to more fun, even if it doesn't necessarily mean more winning.
Okay.
Which I think segues us into what the story was that you wrote last night.
Yes. So after seeing the response, before we had talked about it, and we were sort of preparing ideas for where the Jazz would land. And if they didn't get the first pick, because that would have been obvious, I was planning on who could be available for the Jazz here. But then the 5th pick was announced. Mm-hmm. I waited a little bit. I scrolled through some reactions on social media. I also talked to you and some other people. And I decided what's next for the Jazz is more appropriate because, as you said, as soon as the pick was announced, it was sort of like a doomsday mindset for a lot of Jazz fans. So I went through and I basically dumbed down the Jazz's future to 2 routes, even though anything can happen in the NBA. In reality, the Jazz can make hundreds of decisions.
Well, look at what happened yesterday in the NBA alone. Dallas went from being the laughingstock of the NBA to the top, and the team that has been the top, which is the Boston Celtics, just saw their future collapse.
Yeah.
We don't know what Jason Tatum, what has happened to him as of 1:00 on Tuesday after that injury, but it looks like it's an Achilles injury, and they've got a bunch of salary cap issues this summer, and they're not winning a title this year. They went from the top to in a really precarious spot in 5 seconons.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly the league can change. As what happened with the Mavericks, they went from a joke to a team that is going to be taken very seriously in the Western Conference very soon. In no time.
Yes.
So you got to be used to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 2 paths that I chose for the Jazz was basically fighting to minimize your losses and then accept defeat and fully commit to what you sort of, I don't want to say half committed to last year because you did end up with the worst record, but just fully buying into that tank.
So basically it's run it back or make a radical change.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. And for the radical change, it could look like a lot of things. That could be putting your name in the hat for the Giannis, Kevin Durant, Trae Young, Zions of the world. Or it could just be as simple as like aggressively pushing for that 2nd or 3rd pick. Accepting defeat is picking at 5, trading all of your veterans. That's Jordan Clarkson, maybe even Lauri Markkanen and John Collins. All of those guys. So then it's just a complete youth movement. You don't have to throw out these goofy injury reports like you mentioned earlier.
Right.
And then you can just have a full developmental season and be in the same spot a year from now.
I don't think the Jazz will run it back.
Okay.
I don't. And I recognize that the strategy is still somewhat sound.
Yes.
Right? You run it back like you did last year. And look, here's the sense. I think you do a little bit of both.
Okay.
Is what you do. I don't think they should. They probably have the guts because Danny Ainge doesn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, he cares, but he doesn't care. Like if you're frustrated on Twitter, like he thinks like this is the best way to win, so we're going to keep doing this. And I think he's undeterred by what other people think. I don't think the Jazz want to have John Collins resting 30 games or 50 games, and Lauri Markkanen resting 50 games, and now Walker probably has to rest 40 because he's good enough. Colin Sexton's got to be out. I don't think they're going to do that again. I really don't. I don't think there's an appetite for it, and not just from the fans. I don't think there's an appetite from it for Will Hardy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an appetite for it for Justin Zanuck. I don't think there's an appetite from it for Ryan Smith, and then I don't think there's an appetite probably for Danny Ainge. And truthfully, you have to trade John now. Like if John, look, there's a chance John just doesn't opt into his contract.
True.
I don't think that's the case, but things change quickly, again, as we're saying. So if John opts into his contract and he's not a piece of the long-term future, you have to trade him this year. And if you can't trade him at the trade deadline, you got to trade it. Or if you don't know if you're going to be able to, you got to trade him now. Otherwise, that's an asset you're going to lose for nothing.
Yeah.
So I think inherently you're going to start moving those types of pieces around. And look, Colin Sexton's in the last year of his contract as well. So you have to have the same approach. You no longer get to like do the wait and see. The clock is really ticking now. You're getting close to the midnight hour with those guys. So inherently that is going to change, I think. And I don't think they have shown enough to be guys who you want to like give 4-year extensions to, meaning you give them a 3-year extension beyond this year and they're a part of your team for 4 more years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they're players that fit your timeline that way. And then when it comes to timeline, Lowry's going to be 28 years old and you're getting another 20-year-old that you're adding to your roster, a 19-year-old you're adding to your roster. I just think they were already really getting narrow with trying to keep Lowry connected to the young group of guys.
Yes.
And you're actually getting younger now by adding this draft pick, by not getting a Cooper Flagg who's performing at the age of a 25-year-old. Like, that's the difference. Cooper performs at the age of a 25-year-old right now. And then he's got 5 years to grow, and that's why he's so valuable. You're getting a guy who's going to perform like a 19 or 20-year-old, and you're losing space with Lowry.
Yes.
You're losing that opportunity to win with Lowry. And I think that's why I think the Jazz will very seriously explore trading Lowry now.
Okay, and when you're talking about trading these veterans, that could align with both of these paths. Are you thinking they're trying to get better, like upgrading these veterans, maybe a few of them packaged in a pick? Or do you think that they're trading them for younger players to match their timeline more?
My thought immediately when I read your article and was like, how do you do a little bit of both?
Yeah.
Because here's the problem, and here's why last night hurt so bad. So much of the Jazz's high-risk investment.
Yep.
So you have your low-risk investments and you have your high-risk investments. Like that's true. It's how you build teams, right? Yep. You take swings. If you're a championship team and you're really good, you can do a couple of things with the draft. You can either take the swing and hope you get Deshaun Stevenson, which is the Jazz did, hoping he would be the next star post John and Carl, or maybe you get a guy who's actually going to come in and contribute, but there's no star upside there, but you think he's going to fit into the rotation. So the Jazz's high-risk assets right now have all been in the draft, right? You're tanking an entire season to hopefully win the lottery to get a number 1 pick. That's extraordinarily high risk because if you fall to 5, it's devastating.
Yep.
But your low risk are Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, Colin Sexton, right? Like they're solid contributors. They're easy. They're pretty good vets. They're going to give you the same thing every night. Low risk.
Yep.
I kind of think you invert that.
Okay.
I kind of think you flip that. And I think what you do is you start looking at who are high-risk investment players right now that are available, and you do a little bit more low-risk draft stuff and say, hey, maybe you end up with the 8th pick. Now, the hard part is that the Jazz, if they get the 9th pick, they owe it to the Thunder next year.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. So you want to fall into that 4, 5, 6 spot and decrease your odds of falling to 8.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need to have the worst record because that's the ultimate high risk swing like they did this season. But maybe you win 25 games or 27 games next year. And the draft pick is just kind of a moderate risk, somewhat safe. You're going to get a 5, 6, 7 pick. Maybe worst case scenario, you fall to 8. It goes to OKC. Best case scenario, you win and you move up to 1 or 2, which we have now seen happen with these flattened lottery odds. But you're no longer betting on your medium risk players.
Yes.
And the guys I look at for that are the Jalen Greens of the world with the Houston Rockets and the Jonathan Kumingas, which are these former lottery picks who don't fit with their current teams.
Yeah.
Certainly available for trade. Like Jalen Green's just going to be available this summer. He had a horrendous playoffs. His value is very low. We've talked about this in the last couple of weeks. Jonathan Kuminga's playing great right now, actually, with the Warriors, but they're about to get eliminated in 5 games. He's going to want to get paid this summer. The Warriors don't have the money to pay him. That's where I might invert my investment approach.
Okay.
So I'm going to go higher risk players because if Jalen Green comes in, he's 23 years old and he still has 2 years to develop and he has a next level, there's still all-star potential there.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Kuminga, as he's showing, he's scoring 30 points a game in the playoffs, 20 points a game in the playoffs right now. Like, he's not a zero-risk player. He's a high-risk player. Golden State doesn't believe in him. Steve Kerr doesn't believe in him, but maybe you say, well, he doesn't fit next to Steph, he doesn't fit next to Draymond, but if you give him the ball in Utah and he and Jalen Green are just kind of super athletic scorers and you think that's where your mentality is, maybe that makes sense.
Yeah.
Versus Lowry, and here's why I think this makes sense. We know Lowry's not the number one guy because if Lowry was the number one guy, the Jazz wouldn't have been looking for their North Star last night in Cooper Flagg.
True.
We know that that's not the case. And we know Collins not either, and we know John Collins isn't. So don't treat them that way anymore.
Yeah.
You got to start looking. If you're looking for that guy in the draft, last night proved that that's a hard way to do it. Maybe you take a different approach and you go for a guy who's already in the league. And by the way, when I'm thinking you trade for Jalen Green, like you're talking Lowry Markkanen to the Rockets for Jalen Green, and I think you hope to get like a Reed Shepherd also, which is another high swing, but it's a number 3 overall pick, didn't play for them this year. I know they really like him. And I don't know, maybe you have to put another asset in there. And maybe that's a young player, maybe that's a Timberwolves pick, whatever. I don't know. But maybe you shift that investment strategy. And then Kuminga, it's like a sign and trade for a John Collins or something like that. And the Warriors get a guy. Yeah, I mean, the Warriors are doing the opposite, right? They have this high-risk investment in Kuminga that doesn't work for them. And they say, that's not what we need. We just need depth. Yep. We need a guy who can play, and we're going to lose Kuminga for nothing because he's just going to sign with the Brooklyn Nets for $25 million. What if we can convince him that Utah's a better spot? We get something back in a John Collins or a Colin Sexton or whatever, and then everybody wins. Yeah. Kuminga gets to his place. He gets a contract. We get an asset instead of losing him for nothing because he was a former top 10 pick, and that's the value there. So that was just kind of my thought is you have the same strategy. You still have your high-risk stuff. You still have your low-risk stuff. But you flip where it's going right now because you're seeing right now that, man, it's hard to build to the draft.
Yes.
And you learned it again last night, and there's no guarantee that just being the worst team in the NBA again next year. Sorry, I know I'm rambling. There's no guarantee you get the number 1 pick next year either.
Yeah.
So.
And all of this we're talking about, I want Jazz fans to keep this in mind. All of this, we're talking about options that the Jazz have, right? I want to take this line from my article last night. Although Utah's streak of lottery misfortune continued, the good news is that the franchise still has some level of control over its future. If you look at Phoenix, you look at the Bucks. They have no control.
Right.
Like the Bucks basically have to trade Giannis to be able to do anything with their future.
Just to get flexibility.
Yes.
Right.
So it's like cut and dry. It sucks that the Jazz fell to 5, but it's far from the end of the world.
No, it's not. It's a setback.
Yes.
You're 12 months behind again, where you hoped you'd be 12 months ahead, and you're 12 months behind again. Which is big. It's a long time, but it's the realistic aspect of trying to build this way. The other part I want to break down, and look again, the Jalen Green, the Jonathan Kuminga, it's a hypothetical. Yeah. Those guys are stand-ins for any number of players. They're just kind of the obvious names that come to mind right now that you say, run loose. Try and win as many games as you can because, truthfully, Jalen Green, Jonathan Kuminga have never been the legit number 1 guys, and when they have, their teams haven't won. You're probably winning 27 games if those guys go out and play really hard next to Walker Kessler. Or if it works and they win 38 games, then maybe you have something.
Yeah.
Then your investment is paying off. And you give up your pick to the Thunder next year, unless it jumps into the top 4 anyways, which is where you want to be drafting. And if it's another number 9 pick or another number 10 pick, are Jazz fans dying if Cody Williams isn't on the roster right now? No. And that's probably what you're getting at 10 again next year.
Yeah.
So if you get lottery luck, great. You jump up to number 4. If not, fine. You give up your pick and you've got at least a couple of young guys or something like that. At least you've got a direction. I think that's the thing I would look for if I were the Jazz. They have taken this there's no plan until you have the guy, and everyone wants a plan. And I totally agree with Danny Ainge on that sense. Don't build the wrong plan. Don't build the wrong building. That doesn't get you anywhere. But I do think you start to need to have some shape of a team.
Yeah.
And they don't have a shape right now, right? It's a couple of young guys. It's a couple of older guys. It's future draft picks. It's expiring contracts. I think I'm starting to consolidate that into at least a direction.
Yes.
Right? You've got your Clay. You've got your big ball. I need a shape. It's cool to have the ball. That's what you're talking about. Milwaukee wishes they had.
Yeah.
That's what Phoenix wishes they had. I'm starting to at least mold it into this is kind of what we want to play like. This is what I want this to look like. Not just this is a scatter shot. This is hopeful. This is whatever. Maybe this pays off. Maybe this pays off. Maybe this pays off. I think you need to shape it a little bit.
Yeah.
That would be my approach. Let's take a break. We will come back. I do want to talk a little bit about 5 and what it means for the Jazz.
Okay.
And then I think we'll get into the mailbag.
Yeah.
All right. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. All right, we said we would talk a little bit about number 5.
Yes.
Let's do that quickly. Here's the thing you really have to realize. Like, you're not getting Cooper, obviously.
Yeah.
You're not getting Dylan Harper. The rest of the guys that we have talked about, which were only Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe, like, what are the odds that one of them's there at 5?
I think there's a chance.
Like 30%?
Yeah.
Right? Like, because you only need one person to jump up. Like, that's the nice thing about being at 5. You know, you're not getting those top 2 guys. I liked Ace Bailey quite a bit. You liked him. Mm-hmm. I like VJ Edgecombe. Like, there's a huge chance Trey Johnson jumps into the top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
He's had a great combine. There's a huge chance Jeremiah Fears jumps into the top 3 or 4. Or a Derek Queen jumps into 3 or 4. Or Con Knippel jumps into 3 or 4. Like, again, I'm old enough to remember the Dante Exum draft the last time the Jazz had a top 5 pick. And it was like, nope, it's guaranteed. It's going Wiggins 1, Parker 2, Embiid 3, Exum 4. Jazz are getting Aaron Gordon. The Jazz secretly worked out Aaron Gordon a second time. Like, there's no chance Exum's going to be there. And then on draft night, Exum was there. Yep. Like, I promise you there's going to be movement. And maybe it is that top 4. Maybe it does go Ace Bailey 3, VJ Edgecombe 4. But there's like at least a 30% chance one of these other guys jumps up. I mean, it was an interesting group of teams that went 3 and 4. Philly being there was really interesting because they're trying to win now.
Yeah.
They should get into the Giannis conversation as well. If they could trade 3 and Paul George to get Giannis, like, they should do that, absolutely. Even if they have to throw in, not a Tyrese Maxey, but maybe a Jared McCain. Like, I would do it. Giannis is that good of a player. So there's... What teams want, we just don't know.
Yeah.
You know? And the 2 teams that are ahead of the Jazz, Charlotte and Philly, are particularly curious.
Yes.
And then if Milwaukee ends up with the number 2 pick because the Spurs trade it for Giannis, which is a very realistic possibility, that throws everything into a spin. So there's a very real likelihood that one of VJ Edgecombe or Ace Bailey, who the Jazz would have considered at 3, will be there at 5. Plus, you know, like I said, Trey Johnson's having an incredible combine so far, shooting the heck out of the ball, measured well, has the second highest, or like early on had the second highest vertical, but it's like well over 37 inches. So it's like 37 and a half, not well over, but that's 60 inches. But it has like a good vertical. It's all of a sudden like, oh man, maybe just Texas couldn't show off some of his stuff.
Yeah.
I actually don't believe that as much. Like, I think the player you see is probably the player they are. But okay, so he jumps up to 3 and one of those guys is available. Or he's the guy you want and he's there at 5 and great, you got a good player. So 5 is not a death sentence.
Yes.
In fact, I don't even know if it's a different tier than 3.
True.
If I'm being totally honest with you. I had said, I tweeted it out last night, I'm not going to back off of it. I really think the most likely name, in my opinion, would be Con Knippel.
Yeah.
And we will, but we're not going to get into like the hardcore draft breakdowns. We will do that next week. We already touched on him a little bit. I actually went back and listened to the podcast where we talked about him. I agree with everything I said still. So if you want to go back, you can. But I promise you, we're going to break down Con Knippel. We're going to break down Jeremiah Fears. We've already done Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe. We will talk about Derek Queen. We will talk about Trey Johnson.
Yep.
Like, there's a handful of guys. And of course, we'll mention some names at 21 as well.
And tying in with what you said, I think the 1 and 2 are locked. San Antonio could even end up trading that pick, but I still think Dylan Harper is going to, no matter who is drafting on draft night. But then with 3 and 4, it gets interesting because I think that both Philly and Charlotte might like VJ more than they like Ace Bailey.
I agree.
Because I think that even though Charlotte does maybe still need like high upside swings, I don't know how well Brandon Miller and Ace Bailey fit together. I think that VJ would sort of slide into that 2 spot and be a really great glue guy. And same thing in Philadelphia, who had an injury-riddled season, and now they're probably going to be trying to win again unless something unforeseen happens with Embiid. But I would really not be surprised if Ace is there at 5 for the Jazz.
Drafting for fit is stupid.
Yes.
It's a really bad idea because Ace Bailey's not going to be a good player for 3 years.
Yeah.
And VJ Edgecombe's not going to be a good player for 3 years. Well, 3 years from now, what is Philly going to look like?
True.
We don't know. However, the human instinct does not operate that way.
Yes.
Teams draft for need all the time.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Philly, you have Jared McCain, you have Tyrese Maxey. Like, they're point guardish.
Yeah.
Like, they're point guards.
Yeah.
Essentially. They're lead ball handlers. They need a guy who doesn't need to have the ball in his hands, that can still create, that doesn't get a lot of touches, because all your touches should be going to Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain.
Yep.
So how do I get a 5th guy who fits with all those guys and doesn't need any touches? There's not a better player in the draft for that than VJ Edgecombe.
Yes.
He's a perfect fit for that. Cutter, transition, lob threat, good defensive player. Great.
Yeah.
He makes a ton of sense at 3. I kind of think that's what the direction they're going to go.
Okay.
4, it's like, do the Charlotte Hornets need another really skinny raw player?
Exactly.
That's exactly what Ace Bailey is. So to your point, like, man, I see them taking a Trey Johnson and just saying, like, yeah, great. Doesn't need the ball in his hands. Crazy spot-up shooter, off-ball shooter. Like, he can shoot off the dribble, but he doesn't need to. Or maybe they just say, like, well, we're going to go super shooter and go Con Knipple.
Yeah.
And go in that direction there. Or maybe they say, hey, man, you know what we don't have is a good big guy. And they go Derek Queen. Like, I promise you, that's not crazy. It's not going to be crazy at all for them. They don't need Jeremiah Fears. They could go for Common Malawash. If they don't believe in Mark Williams,
True.
They could absolutely go for Malawash and say that's the big defensive lob catcher that we've really wanted to put next to LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
So it's wide open. We're not going to know who the Jazz are taking at 5 until draft night.
Yes.
Whereas, like, we're going to go into the draft knowing that Cooper's 1 and Dylan Harper's 2, whether that's the Bucks or whether it's the Spurs making that pick. I think those are going to be locked in. I promise you we're not going to know who the Jazz are taking at 5.
No.
At all. And in fact, even if like the board goes as follows, VJ 3, Ace Bailey 4, we still don't know who the Jazz are taking at 5.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Trey. The Jazz could take Derek Queen. Like, why wouldn't the Jazz? If the Jazz felt like he was the best player on the board, why would you not take a super offensive-minded power forward to play next to Walker Kessler?
Yeah.
Like, if you think he's Kyle Filipowski on steroids, take him.
Absolutely.
So it's exciting in that sense. It'll be fun, and I promise you, Jazz fans, you're going to like the draft process. Like, I know you can't even fathom opening a mock draft at the moment, and I don't blame you. But I promise you, you're going to have fun with the draft. And we are going to make it fun. I promise the one thing we will do is make it fun because it is fun.
Yeah.
It's still a fun part of this, and sports are still fun.
I want to go back to something that we talked about last week.
Okay.
Regardless of, we said this before, we knew where the Jazz landed up, but we said even if they land at 5, it is going to be the best prospect that the Jazz have.
Yes.
So,
and by a lot.
Yeah.
I think Taylor Hendricks is still number 2, probably, and maybe it's just the mystery. We didn't get to see him last year. But like Trey Johnson, Common Malawash, Derek Queen, all these guys, they are far better prospects than what Taylor Hendricks, and certainly Cody Williams were.
Yeah. And tying into that, like, even if you take Derek Queen, that, like, I think that he takes priority over Kyle Filipowski, maybe even Walker Kessler.
Yeah.
Which is hard to say because Walker Kessler has been awesome. It was awesome last year.
Yeah.
And then if you take Trey Johnson, almost guaranteed he takes priority over Isaiah Collier and Keontae George.
Yeah, for sure he does. Yeah, of course.
So point is there's still stuff to be excited about.
Right, and so does Con Knipple. So do all of these guys. Like, I know some people are looking at Con Knipple like elite role player, so you can't play him as a star. I'm like, no, they're going to try.
Yeah.
They're going to try and make him a star. Whoever the Jazz take, they're going to try and make a star.
Yeah.
So anyways, we will break those down further. Again, we got 6 weeks to do it. We will promise we're going to do deep dives on all of them. But I think today was about what happened last night and kind of what the next step is and how things change, because I think that was appropriate.
Yes.
Should we get to the mailbag?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I sent out a prompt at 11 o'clock the day that we were recording today, recorded on a Tuesday because we didn't know what was going to happen last night, and that was the right answer because that kind of just might have made it more painful for people.
Yeah.
So happy to be recording today. Put it out on Blue Sky. Put it out on Twitter, at Ben's Hoops, at Seahold Sports. I'll start with Blue Sky, and then we'll get to your to the Twitter side. Mac Basketball. How do I spend all my free time next season not watching the Jazz go through a constant cycle of abuse? Again, I think the Jazz are going to take a more fun approach.
Okay.
Like, I looked this up earlier today. The 5th worst team in the league was the 76ers. I think they won 24 games. Mm-hmm. Like, you could easily sprinkle in 7 more wins for the Jazz. And guess what? That's actually a lot more enjoyable. Yeah. Right? There's 6 months in the season. I know that's only 1 more a month, but like that breaks up the 10-game losing streak and the 11-game losing streak to a 4-game losing streak. Like that's actually how you do it. I just don't think the Jazz are going to have the worst record in the league next year.
Yeah, no.
It's hard to do back-to-back years. They could. And even if you took the approach I threw out there, which is like go super young, throw Jalen Green, throw Jonathan Kuminga out there, try and win as much as possible, you still probably only have the 4th best record at the trade deadline. And then you can tank for the last 6 weeks of the season and drop to 2nd or 3rd. Yeah. Like, I think that's still possible. And put yourself in a spot where you're pretty well insulated that you're not going to fall to 8 and give up your pick. And in fact, it's top 8 protected. So it'd have to fall to 9 to give the pick up to the Thunder next year. So like, fine, have the 5th worst record, 6, 7, 8. It gives you 3 spots to fall. The odds of falling down there, I could pull up Tankathon and look at the odds. This could be like 4%. I don't think that's a big concern.
Yeah. You don't know what else you can do? Tusks up.
Tusks up. Yeah, right. They did win the lottery. Yeah.
No, I'm joking. I will always love basketball. Yeah. And that's something that me and you talked about in the thick of last season, which is like, I think someone had asked us, like, how do you enjoy like watching this team? Yeah. And it's like, just like enjoy watching the young players get better. I know it's hard to say because they're going to end up losing the game most nights, but there's still things to look at, still things to watch. There's still going to be highlights. It's still basketball at the end of the day.
And again, like, I promise you, this 5th pick the Jazz take, like Con Knippel, Trey Johnson, they're way better than the rookies the Jazz had last year.
Absolutely.
Like, a lot better.
Yeah.
So, and they will be more focused. They will be more in focus. Because again, I just don't see the Jazz running it back with all these vets. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I'm totally off. But I think you'll see them featured even more.
Yeah.
All right. From James on Blue Sky. Do you think there will be any discussions among NBA officials of tweaking the lottery system? Yes, it will be talked about. I don't know how quickly you could even do it.
Yeah.
They only changed it in 2019. It is, in a sense, working the way they did want it to work.
True.
They don't want teams tanking, and they want it to hurt so bad when you tank and fall to 5 that your fan base revolts, which is what the Jazz are dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Like, you've got a very angry fan base saying, why was that worth it? That's the question the NBA wants you to ask. I actually think it's a mistake. I said it last week. I think by flattening the odds, you've actually encouraged more teams to tank because there's a real value to being the 8th worst team in the NBA, where in the past, the 8th worst team in the NBA might have just said, well, we're too far from being 3 or 4, which is your only real chance of winning the lottery, so we might as well try and get into the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
But now they've kind of done it all. You can kind of be in the play-in tournament and try and get into the playoffs and be Dallas, who was in the play-in tournament, and then won the lottery. And that's happened in back-to-back years because the Hawks did the same thing last year. You can't reward both.
No.
I think that's the problem. You can't say, well, you're good enough to get in the play-in, but you're also good enough to win the lottery. Actually, I don't think that's good. I would have just left the heavy odds at the top for the worst teams because it's really hard to get there, and let them get out of it because they're probably not going to do it 2 years in a row if they win the lottery or get a top 3 pick, and then left the other teams having basically no chance to do it. So I think they will talk about it. I don't think they will change it.
Okay. Do you think that there's maybe a world where they go somewhere in the middle? Because I know that it used to be like 25 for the first pick and then just like a little bit down
19, 25, 20, 18,
Do you think maybe they do something like instead of 25, it's like 2018, 16, and then still like from there?
Yes, potentially.
Yeah.
And look, Adam Silver, I like Adam Silver. If there's one thing he's done wrong, he's over-fiddled. He just he tried to fix too many things.
Yeah.
I think the lottery was they tried to fix it. And it's fine. It was fine. Yes, tanking's not fun. I think it's going to be a part of the draft. If you want to get rid of it entirely, maybe that's got to be your other step. True. Everybody who misses the playoffs has equal odds because then you get a 6% chance. Everyone has a 6% chance. And you know what? Do 1 through 15.
Yeah.
Or 14. Every pick is up for grabs. That will stop people from tanking because 6% that you could get 1 and 6% chance you could fall to 15 or 14 in the draft is not good. And then maybe teams would stop tanking.
Yeah.
So if that's the goal and he hates tanking, just flatten it out entirely. But I don't know. I don't think they have the guts to do that.
Yeah.
All right, Sammy Paradise, what's the point anymore? The Jazz are a consistent source of disappointment. He's facetious because we've interacted with Sammy before.
Yeah.
Again, like you're going to get a fun player in the draft. I think the Jazz are going to retool to be more fun next year. I think, again, I just think that was really heavy. I think what the season was really heavy. And the payoff was so disappointing that I would be really surprised if they had the stomach to do it again that same way.
Yeah.
You can do similar things without doing it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to tie this into an extra play. We can get back to Blue Sky if there's more. Tyler James Wall, what now? Give us hope. I do like Trey Johnson. Trade targets, that makes sense.
And I mentioned some trade targets.
Yeah. What do you think about, I was waiting for this question to ask you this. You mentioned Jalen Green and Kuminga from the Warriors as sort of high upside players. I think that the highest possible high upside player that you could swing for is Zion. What do you think about that?
Sure. Yeah. Right. Exactly right. Again, it's a high upside swing. Those things all become, I think, more realistic after last night.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about what happens if the Jazz win number 1 and what do they do with Lowry? I think last night's result changed more of what the Jazz will do. I think it had a bigger impact than if they had number 1 of how they would have adjusted their roster. So I think that's interesting. Yeah, I think those types of things are out there. Absolutely. Hey, I'm not trying to be aggregated here and throw a name out there, but the Celtics have to figure out what they're going to do with Jaylen Brown now.
True.
The obvious answer was Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday, and you're going to lose those guys, or Derek White. And it's well, look, maybe the Jazz just say, wait, we like Lowry, and we're going to go get Derek White, and we're going to keep those guys together with the number 5 overall pick and give the Celtics a future draft pick or whatever and say, there's your relief. You get some salary cap relief, and here's John Collins, or here's Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton for Derek White, and the Jazz throw in a draft pick. Maybe that's the best the Celtics are going to get. And then the Jazz say, okay, well, Derek White's a winner, and you've got a number 5 overall pick, and you've got these young guys, and you've got Lowry. That's the retool. Again, there are so many pathways to talk about how to do this for the Jazz. You think Jaylen Brown would be the pie in the sky option if it's not Giannis and it's not some of these other guys. But like, there's a lot that's going to happen this summer. It's going to be a crazy summer in the NBA because we know Kevin Durant's getting moved. Very likely Giannis gets moved. There's going to be loose pieces as a result. So it'll feel different next year, and I think Jazz fans will buy into that because it'll be shiny and new.
Yeah.
And even if the result or the hope is the same of to get a high lottery pick next year, it might look different. One of the things I didn't mention, because I don't know if the fans don't have the stomach for it. I don't think the front office has the stomach for it necessarily. I don't think the players have the stomach for it.
Okay.
I don't think Lowry, John, Walker, maybe even Walker, but Colin, Jordan, do they have the stomach for doing what happened last year? That stunk.
Yeah.
That was not fun for anybody. Mm-hmm. So I think if the Jazz were to go into the season and say, hey guys, this is what's going on, what do you want to do? They would all say, send me somewhere else.
Yeah.
Including Lowry, would be my guess.
Any more blue sky?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Next, over here from Jimbo Slice. Do you see the Jazz packaging their second round picks and number 21 to get up into the latter part of the lottery?
No, I don't. I don't think that's enough, A. And B, again, I think maybe you start to shift away from the idea that the lottery is where the piece is coming from.
Yeah.
I kind of think that. Not that you don't still have a number 5 overall pick and you hope to get another number 5 pick next year. You do. You hope to get Cam Boozer or AJ DiBonsa or Darren Peterson or whatever, but I think maybe you just shift away from all draft as being kind of your biggest asset acquisition pathway.
Okay.
Especially if you're talking about late lottery. The Jazz don't need another 15th pick on this roster. 21 to 15 in this draft. It's actually interesting. There have been some good measurements, some good shooting performances early in this combine process. 21 might be an okay pick. And I don't want to overstep on this, so I apologize if we get questions about it. I don't know how much I'm investing going up from 5 to 2. It's going to take a gargantuan effort to go from 5 to 2.
True.
Meaning you're trading all your future unprotected Suns pick that you've acquired, the Lakers 2027 pick, this pick, and I wouldn't do the 5th pick in Lowry to get up to number 2 at all.
Okay.
I wouldn't even consider that.
Okay.
Way too rich for my blood.
Yeah.
No, Lowry's good. Lowry's going to get you something back.
True.
So I'm not betting to get to number 2 on a somewhat risk of Dylan Harper, who I like a lot, but I don't know if he's such an obvious hit and so much more likely to be a star than what you're going to get at number 5 that I also give up my other best trade asset right now in Lowry Markkanen. If it was Cooper, of course. Yeah. But it's not. Dylan Harper's not that good of a player.
Yeah. All right, next up, James McKinney. I think the Jazz need to double down and try to get a second lottery pick in 2026. Which teams would be suitors, and what would a framework of a deal look like?
So it's Lowry back to Chicago. Now that doesn't make sense because they would never take Lowry back because they've already embarrassed themselves on that front. But yeah, it's the Kings. Yeah. You know what I mean? Can you get? Do you trade them Lowry for DeMar DeRozan? They get out of jail free card with DeMar, and you take their unprotected or not unprotected, but lightly protected first round draft pick next year, top 6 protected, which is not light, and then you hope that you get the 8th pick and your own 5th pick, and then you have 8 and 5. But not because you're hoping it's going to move to 1. I don't think the Jazz have the ability to get an unprotected pick from anyone next year with the current talent they have.
Yeah.
Unless you were to trade this year's 5th pick.
True.
And just say we'll trade you our 5th pick this year for your unprotected pick next year. And the team's well, we're going to be the 13th best team next year. So, okay.
Yeah.
Great buy low value for us.
Next up, Stockton Ashby. Is there enough data to suggest that relying on lottery luck with the flattened odds is an unreliable team-building strategy? Is the better path a calculated trade strategy with the right target, i.e. Halliburton and Siakam and Indy? Is destroying the team for several more years worth it, and really the path of choice for data? The worst team in the NBA has not won the first pick with the new odds, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe they've fallen to 5 3 years in a row, and I think there's a 10-11% chance of even that happening 3 years in a row.
Right.
So yeah, there is data. So because it's only been since 2019, so we're looking at a 6-7 year sample size, and it's that it doesn't really work.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's still the best way to rebuild if you hit.
Yes.
Getting Anthony Edwards has been the best thing that's happened for the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Getting Wemby is the best thing that has happened for the Spurs. But both of those years, 29 other teams did not get him.
Yes.
So what do they adjust? So how do they make that approach? And you can talk about the OKC model, but we also right now need to talk about the Indy model, which was great. They had a guy, which is funny. He was very much the Lowry Markkanen before Lowry Markkanen, still kind of is, but they traded Sabonis for Halliburton.
Yeah.
Now, Sabonis was younger than where Lowry is now. But that was the trade they made. They found a team that had overlapping skills, and they traded a piece that they thought fit better to get a guy, and they bet on that guy. And Halliburton's not like a true blue superstar. Like, he's not Shea.
Yeah.
He's not an MVP candidate, but he's a guy that is clearly the best player on that team. And then they went out and got Pascal when Pascal was kind of weirdly unwanted.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he sold for way too cheap, and that is working for them.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, look at the Knicks approach. Now, it helped that Jalen Brunson signed with the Knicks because his dad played there or coached there. The myth, though, is that, like, he signed for nothing. Everyone scoffed at the contract he got when he first got it. Like, you're giving Jalen Brunson $160 million for 4 years or whatever, 124, whatever the deal was.
Yeah.
Like, that's a blasphemous overpay. And he had just been a very good player in the playoffs when they beat the Jazz. And everyone knew Jalen Brunson was, like, cool and a good guy, but nobody knew, like, you're paying him all-star money, like star money to be your guy, and that was right.
Yeah.
And then they kind of, all the other pieces started to fall in place, and they traded for McHale, and they traded for OG Anunoby, and they traded for Cat. Now, like, they've kind of done a great team building. I mean, they've done a truly great team building, no question about it. But there's, like, a lot of pathways to build your team now. It's not just the draft. It helps to have good players in the draft, and the Jazz do. But how do you organize those to get to the, your 5-man, 6-man, 7-man unit, which something you and I talked about before the show, which is like kind of the interesting theory now that we haven't grasped yet, because sometimes we need like 3 years of the pattern to truly recognize what's happening.
Yeah.
Average teams are winning championships. And maybe, okay, that's an overstretch. Like, good teams are winning championships. You don't need to be great anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be great to win a championship. I think there's a very realistic chance now we're going to have a good team that wins the title this year and not an all-time team. And you look back at 6 different champions in 6 different years, it's like the last Warriors team that won the title was good. They weren't the 73 Warriors who didn't even win the title.
Yeah.
But Kevin Durant was gone. You had got Clay after an Achilles and a knee injury.
Andrew Wiggins,
right, was your starter and ended up starting the All-Star team. He had a good year, but like Wiggins is fine.
Yeah.
We are seeing more okay to good teams winning. And this year, if the Pacers win, it's a good team. They're not a great team.
No.
The Knicks win this year, they're a good team. They're not a great team. If the Timberwolves win this year, good team. Not a great team. Like, and that's going to be 3 of the 4 teams that are left. If you want to argue with me that the Thunder are a great team, I would listen. I might even push back. They have really good depth.
Yeah.
They have exciting young players. I think it's fair to say, like, right now, Chet is not where we expected him to be in year 3. And he's had injuries, but, like, Chet's not a superstar.
Yeah.
He's good. Jalen Williams had a 30-point game in this series so far. He's been very average the other 3 games. Like, Shea's great. You have a great player, and you have a bunch of okay guys around him. Maybe you just kind of need to be good.
Yeah.
So while the Jazz, and I use this comparison or metaphor on my show, so I'm sorry if you're hearing this again. Like, in the past, to win a title, you thought you had to scale Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Like, now you might have to get up to the top of Ensign Peak. You know what I mean? Which is just like, yeah, there's a handrail, there's a pathway, and like, it's 40 minutes, but it's not 3 weeks at base camp to acclimate, and then whatever 12, I don't know how long it takes to get to the top of Everest, but half the people are going to die en route. Like, I just don't know if that's what it takes to win a championship anymore in the NBA, which was actually the other idea the league had. Like, it shouldn't be so impossible to win a title. You shouldn't have to have LeBron to win a title. There should be other ways to win now. And I think there are. So maybe, like, you look now and you say, like, man, we used to think you had to hit 1,000, and now it's like, you got to do 600.
Yeah.
And that's good enough now. And that's attainable. Even with the assets the Jazz have, that's pretty attainable. And like, I don't know where or when or how, but like, I don't think it's 10 years in the future. Like, I think you get back to being pretty good pretty soon. And the pool of teams that can win a championship in the NBA has gone from 2 to 4 to like legitimately 8, because the Cavs are about to get eliminated.
Yeah.
Like, some injuries really hurt them. But with the Celtics out of the way, like, the Cavs should have absolutely capitalized on this being their year to win a title.
True.
This should have been their year. The Pacers have a legitimate chance to do it. The Knicks have a legitimate chance to do it. Like, man, if the Lakers were to have gotten past the Timberwolves, and they didn't, they got eliminated in 5 games, but like, had they made the Mark Williams trade, are we sure that they're not like crushing the Thunder or the Warriors right now, and then going into a series where like, hey, you're a Shea ankle roll away from coming out of the West, and you can beat either Indiana or New York. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I just think we're getting to that, and I know that's like, well, all these hypotheticals. I think that's what championships are going to be now. So all these teams win because even the Celtics last year, great team, really good. This year they have not looked great. It's the exact same roster.
Yeah.
But like, remember who they beat to get there? It was all these battered teams. These teams had all these injuries to get there, and they avoided the Knicks because the Knicks got eliminated by the Pacers because they were beat up, and they beat the Cavs and the Celtics beat the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell was out for the last 2 games with a calf injury. Like, you're just seeing it.
Yeah.
You're seeing it a lot more and more. So, sorry, tangent.
No.
But like, I just don't think you have to be great to win a title anymore. I think you have to be pretty good.
And I want to tag on to that. I think that the chance element has always been there, but now the NBA is so talented from like 1 to 8 on most rosters that it's amplified.
Yep.
Like even looking back to 2015, the Cavs, Kelly Olynyk threw Kevin Love's arm out of his socket, and then Kyrie Irving, I think, had a knee injury, and then the Cavs lose it in the finals. They could win that series with those two. Who knows? They did it the next year.
Yeah, right.
And then now you're looking at everyone on the court can do everything. Everyone is so skilled, and then, like you said, it just takes an injury or getting hot at the right time or anything like that. So I agree with you. I think that there are paths to go, but also looking at the 4 teams who we're projecting to be in the conference finals. The Timberwolves, the 2 teams out west, the Timberwolves and the Thunder, had lottery luck, Anthony Edwards, Chet Holmgren. And then looking at the East, the Knicks and the Pacers basically didn't have that much lottery luck, at least off the top of my head, and they built their teams.
Yeah, none.
Yeah. So
Right?
it's like
the best pick I think the Pacers have on their roster right now is Ben Mathurin.
Yeah.
And like, he's getting thrown out of games because he's shoving guys. Like, he's not that big of a deal. No, I think instead of what used to be the big 3, which was what everyone wanted, I think it's like, give me the best 6.
Yeah.
Not a big 3, give me the best 6. And that doesn't mean that my number 1 has to be as good as LeBron. Like, maybe it's Tyrese Halliburton, but man, I've got Andrew Nembhard,
yes,
and TJ McConnell and Miles Turner, who are like, well, they're better than your 4th guy, and they're better than your 5th guy, and they're better than your 6th guy. And you're playing 6 guys in the playoffs. Like, it's not 8 guys. Actually, it's 6 guys. And the Knicks, everyone clowned the Knicks, and maybe rightfully so. They could still be an embarrassment here. They could lose the next 3. I don't think they're going to.
Yeah.
But like, everyone clowned the Knicks for having 5 guys and nothing beyond it. It's like, well, they've got the best 5 guys.
Yeah.
Their 5th guy is OG Anunoby. Well, that dude rules.
Yeah.
Like, he's better than your 5th guy. So they might win the East because their 5th guy is better than yours, not because Jalen Brunson is better than LeBron. He's not. He's not better than Luka. He's great. Don't get me wrong. He's very good. He's extremely flawed. He's little. He can't play defense at all. Like, that's a flawed player to be your number 1 guy. Cat is extraordinarily flawed. He can't play any defense. He can't block shots. He's your 7-footer. He doesn't do anything in the paint other than score. But man, he's a pretty good number 2, and McHale's a really good number 3, and OG is a 4, and Hart is an unbelievable 5.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the pathway maybe. And look, until they have a new CBA, which is not going to be for several years because they just agreed to this one with these tax aprons and how punitive it is, like, this is what it's going to look like. This isn't going to change radically and the rug's going to be pulled out from underneath you. Teams will get better at playing this way, but like, this is how you're going to move forward. Like, truthfully, the Grizzlies were probably closer than we realized this year to win a title. And they were a joke in the playoffs. But like, if Jaw's healthy all year, Bane's healthy, Jaren Jackson Jr. is healthy, then you get a Zach Edey and you have like a Santi Aldama. I don't even know if he's still on the roster. Whatever. Like, okay, maybe you have a chance now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's why the Rockets might be like this close. We're talking about like, can they get Giannis? Like, they might be Lowry away.
True.
Like, that honestly might be how close they are.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
All right, moving on now.
Sorry, that was a 9-minute answer.
From Sam. What are we hearing about Trey Johnson at the Combine? Do you think the Jazz won't have a chance at taking him?
Again, great measurements.
Yeah.
So let me pull them up. Let me see if I can find all the Trey Johnson measurements. But it's like 6'4.5" in shoes, or without shoes on. So he's a little 6'6" with shoes on, which is really prototypical 2-guard size.
Yeah.
36-inch vertical, 37-inch vertical, right around in that range. So like plus side vertical, not 32, not 33, plus vertical, which is really good. I think he had some of the best agility stats so far. So like the athleticism that was pretty questionable at Texas has been really high level.
Yeah.
Moving quickly, great lateral quickness, 6'10" wingspan. So he's got the arms now to actually play some defense. on top of the vertical leap. It's like, okay, well, that might fix his finishing issues that he didn't have at Texas. So let's get into Trey just a little bit.
Okay.
Awesome shooter.
Yes.
Like legitimate, like almost 40% from three. It was like 39.9 or whatever it was. Averaged 19.9 points per game. I think he led the SEC in scoring.
Yeah.
And the SEC was the best college basketball tournament this year. And he's a freshman.
Yeah.
All of his shooting comes off from the three-point line.
Yeah.
Almost all of it. He doesn't get to the paint. He's not like a break you down playmaker for other guys. At least he didn't show that a whole lot, but played with a truly atrocious team at Texas with a coach that they fired the second I think the season ended.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't wait to get rid of him, and rightfully so. He was a bad coach. So maybe there's some mystery there and some hiddenness there or something hiding there that you could mine. But the question was like the athleticism is not great. He doesn't have a great first step. He doesn't finish at the rim. He doesn't get there a whole lot. He got out in transition a little bit and had some good numbers there, but like you just didn't see it in the half court at all.
Yeah.
So the fear is that he's Buddy Hield, right? Okay. Like that's the fear is that actually his best skill is just taking threes, no creation off the dribble, no getting to the rim and doing anything there. He's just like a shooting specialist, which is good, valuable. But like if that's what you're drafting, it's where Con Knippel comes in. It's like, well, Con's actually a better shooter, so why not just take Con?
Yeah.
Who's actually a super high level passer, has a little bit of dribble penetration, not crazy, but like, you know, like I said, he's Bryce Sensabaugh with an Intel Core processor, like reads the game super quickly, immediately calculating like what's going on the floor. Like this helps coming here. I'm passing the ball here. Yeah. And defensively does the same thing. It doesn't have great physical tools, but he says, well, if this guy's here, I know I got to be here. Yeah. Like that's where he has value defensively. And by the way, Trey Johnson's an atrocious defensive player.
Yes. So, if I were to compare them, it would be in like, this is very loose comparisons. I'm not saying these players are going to be the players I'm about to say, but Trey Johnson would be like James Harden and Con Knippel would be like Klay Thompson.
Okay, sure.
Which is like, makes sense and also doesn't in some ways, but like Trey Johnson's more of a creator. Con is more of a catch and shoot kind of guy. Con like
and creator for himself, not for others.
Yes,
Trey Johnson's not creating for anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like Klay Thompson was a big piece on championship rosters. James Harden has never gotten a ring. Not saying James Harden isn't a smart basketball player, but I think that Con has the advantage over Trey there.
I think Trey looks for Trey.
Yes,
and I think Con kind of looks for everybody else.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like me versus connector.
Yes.
Which there's value to both.
Yep.
There's huge value to both. I think that's going to come down to a philosophical conversation for the Jazz if they're both are on the board at 5.
Yeah.
Anyways, not to get too lost into that conversation. What was the question?
It was just...
why is his lottery or why has his combine been so good and what are we hearing?
Yeah.
But look, and apparently, so listening to some other podcasts, people have seen him work out. Yeah. Like apparently Trey is unsurprisingly shooting the heck out of the ball. Yeah. And by the way, Con's going to as well.
Yes.
These guys are going to shoot like legitimately 70% on open threes, these combines, and teams are going to say, it's the most valuable skill. It's why if Cody had shot 40% from 3 last year, we'd be talking about his rookie season way different. He shot 26%.
Yeah.
If Keontae was a 40% three-point shooter right now, he would be way higher on the Jazz's like, we're building this guy with their future. Same with Isaiah Collier, obviously. But who were the young players who had the best seasons last year, not named Walker Kessler? It was Kyle Filipowski and it was Bryce Sensabaugh.
Yeah.
Well, what do? They shoot well.
Yeah.
So draft shooters. Like we really underrate how much just shot making matters in the NBA today. So those guys shooting well and Trey Johnson shooting well is going to make him really valuable. It's why he might jump up to 3 or to 4. Trey Johnson might go that high. So anyways.
Next up, Rob Allen. 4 expiring contracts at $8 million plus. Full tank again or load up on vets as Tony Jones suggests.
I just wouldn't go like the Dallas veteran route. Like I don't
know. Yeah.
Again, we talked about like maybe Derek White. Like maybe you could do something like that. That's kind of interesting. The Jazz showed interest in Drew Holiday a year ago. It was 2 years ago, I guess, and he ended up getting traded to Boston instead of to Salt Lake after Milwaukee had traded him to Portland. So the Jazz have kicked the tires on that a little bit. I just don't know if I'd go old veteran.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I just don't know if I'm going like, again, I like the idea that you get some guys who are older, a la Kuminga and Jalen Green, but aren't necessarily going to get you like unnecessary wins that don't help your future. That's the problem with old guys. Like, if you're not going to win the lottery, these old guys are only going to be here for a year and a half. Like, so you get a little taste of a little bit of winning. I don't think that makes sense either. Like, I don't think you completely abandon the recipe you've had to get top picks in recent years. I do think you tweak it a little.
Yeah. Absolutely. And another question tagging on from Rob. With the assets the Jazz have, why not shop for Giannis and Booker? What's wrong with a buy-in now? I don't think the Jazz can do a Giannis trade. I think that the Spurs can. Maybe even the Rockets could. But I think that I wrote this in the article. I think you need a pick higher than 5 to actually get some interest from the Bucks in that trade.
Yep.
But
that's the hard part. If the Jazz, again, this was the other part of last night. I tweeted about it a little bit. If you had been 2, 3, 4, probably 2 or 3, but really 2 is the best spot, obviously. You're in the catbird seat. So Danny Ainge a year ago this time, loved being in the catbird seat because the Jazz had the best player for trade in Lowry Markkanen, and they just didn't trade him.
Yeah.
But they had the best asset out there. Now you've got Giannis out there. You've got Kevin Durant out there. You've got the number 2 pick out there. You've got the number 3 pick out there from Philly. Like, the Jazz went from last summer having the best trade piece to like having the 5th or 6th best.
Yeah.
And like the 4th best draft pick. Because 2, 3, and 4 2, 3, 4, and 5 will all be available in trade talks.
Yeah.
You know, like they're just going to be because of where San Antonio is. And because Dylan Harper's actually a bit of an awkward fit in San Antonio.
True.
He's like an okay shooter. He's not a great shooter. Well, Wemby's an okay shooter. He's not a great shooter. De'Aaron Fox is an okay shooter. He's not a great shooter. Steph Castle's a bad shooter. It's like they actually just need raw shooting. There's like some sense for them to trade back to like 3 and take Trey Johnson.
Yeah.
In fact, like there's a world they just take Trey Johnson.
True.
Like I think you probably aren't getting enough value there, so you trade back and you get Trey Johnson and somebody gives you extra assets to move up and get Dylan Harper. But like I don't think you're going back further than 3 or 4 if like that's your bet. You better know who Philly's taking at 3 if they're not taking Trey Johnson. Like, if you don't think they're taking Trey Johnson, then maybe you can move back as far as 4. But, like, teams draft for fit all the time. And Harper might just be a little bit of a weird fit in San Antonio.
This is going to be crazy, and this is why I am not an NBA general manager. This is why I sit here and talk about basketball. But if I were the Spurs, I would trade De'Aaron Fox and take Dylan Harper. Like,
I think there is a pathway where that makes sense.
Yeah, like, because I think that Dylan Harper does a lot of the same things that De'Aaron Fox does, and he's younger and maybe has a higher ceiling than Fox ever had. And then I'm sure there's someone out there like the Spurs wanted Fox that will want Fox, and you can get a couple picks back or something like that. But no, I agree with you. I don't think Dylan Harper, he's super weird fit in San Antonio with what they have.
It's like maybe the worst fit for him.
Yeah.
Of anybody who was going to be in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost the worst fit.
And like ignoring there being De'Aaron Fox in there, which is probably the biggest glaring issue, is the fact that he's not a great shooter. And Wemby is a good shooter, not a great shooter.
Right.
Steph Castle, like you said, bad shooter. Like it's a really weird fit. So I think it'll be interesting what happens with that pick.
And the other wrinkle, there's 2 more wrinkles in this.
Okay.
That they're having these conversations. Again, one thing I think is important to recognize, I think we've said it on the podcast. If you have thought about it as a fan, people in the front office have thought about it.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how outlandish it is.
Yeah.
I promise you, having talked to these people, like they're 6 months ahead of you on all these crazy thoughts. They just are. They're crazier than you are, and they've had crazier thoughts than you have.
Yeah.
There's 2 weird wrinkles that are happening in San Antonio. One, the departure of Pop.
Yes.
And officially moving into the front office role, but not coaching anymore, which look at the history of teams losing their legendary coach. Who continues to do well? Nobody. Yeah. Basically nobody. Miami a little bit post Pat Riley, but he stayed so ingrained.
Yeah.
But even then, like he stepped away, gave it to Stan Van Gundy, and then took it back so he could win a title.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But the Jazz post Jerry were never the same. The Lakers post post Pat Riley in the 90s were not the same. The Bulls post Phil have not been the same. There's a weird the luster of the Spurs can come off really quickly.
Yeah.
Because Pop is not there leading it. Wemby's health is the biggest question mark in the NBA over the next 5 years. Joel Embiid, the big question is like, is his body going to hold up in the NBA?
Yeah.
It hasn't.
No.
Zion Williamson, the big question going into the draft was like, is his body going to hold up in the NBA? It hasn't.
No.
Chet Holmgren's had 2 major injuries in 4 years, right? He broke his foot his first year. He's broken his hip since, his pelvis or his hip or whatever it was. Like, freak bodies. And look, we're just seeing it younger. Like, Jason Tatum just tore his Achilles at 27 years old or whatever it was. Like, not old guy, out of shape, Mehmet Okur stepping back weird. Like, prime of his career, it snapped.
Yeah.
Like the wear and tear on bodies now is higher in the NBA than it's ever been. I know we talk about rest and tanking and all this stuff. It's like, because the game's harder, because the athleticism is so much higher, because the bodies are stronger. Guys are getting hurt more frequently. Like, I personally don't think Wemby's body's going to hold up. I hope he does.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to. But like, you're betting on a pretty big gamble that it holds up year after year after year after year. So I don't know if I'm resetting my timeline and trading De'Aaron Fox to bet on Dylan Harper getting to his prime in 3 years or 4 years, and then Wemby's still good.
Yeah.
I'm kicking the door down. I'm going and getting Giannis because I've got an athletic freak in Wemby who, if in 25 his body's broken down, I will have missed my window if I don't have another guy next to him. And like you look at Ja Morant, like there's a real argument Ja's on the downside of his career, which is crazy. But like his best skill was his athleticism.
Yeah.
He's not that athletic anymore. He's still very athletic, but he's getting hurt a lot and he doesn't quite have that jump that he used to.
Yeah.
So like you might be on the downside of your career there, which is why I think you're going to hear like Ja conversations around the Jazz, just because fans, again, think about everything. And so you're going to hear every name associated with the Jazz. Someone will bring up Ja at some point. It's like I'd be worried about Ja. He might be on the downside of his career. So anyways, Zion might be too. As weird as that sounds, again, these bodies. So if your window opens, I think you might just kick the door down. Yeah. If the Thunder don't win a title this year, they should trade for Giannis. I fully believe that. Like I am trading whatever pick and Chet and salaries to go get Giannis if I don't win the title this year and I'm OKC. No question about it.
Yeah.
I might even do Jalen. I might say take Jalen Williams or take Chet and give me Giannis, and it's one or the other.
Yeah. I think even though, like in theory, Chet, if he's healthy, would sound better next to Shea long term, but bringing up these injury concerns, like you say, maybe that would be the better decision. Next up from Utah Jazz Optimist, is Kahn just a younger and slightly bigger Dalton Knecht? I think that Kahn is a lot better than Knecht in a lot of ways.
First of all, he's 4 years younger.
Yeah.
Again, remember, I think Dalton Knecht was the oldest player in the draft last year. Mm-hmm. Dalton Knecht is 19 on draft night.
Yeah.
I think 19 is first day in the NBA. And I mean like his first game. Yeah. He won't have turned 20 yet. So here's what scares me about Trey, and I want to be careful about this because sometimes we do this, and I'm not doing this. Like we say, like white guys have high IQs and black guys don't.
Yeah,
we're not doing that at all. I want to make sure that that's like very clear because, like, I promise you, Isaiah Collier has one of the highest IQs on the Jazz roster. Like smart guys. I want smart guys on my team. Will Hardy's a smart guy. I want to give him smart guys. One of the reasons why Jazz fans loved Kyle Filipowski and Isaiah Collier last year, smart guys. Yeah. They were doing smart decisions on the floor. So it was fun to watch. Like, low IQ teams are horrible to watch, and I think the Jazz have been a low IQ team for a while. They don't have a bunch of, like, innate game processors.
Yeah.
So you go out and you get a guy who I think is an extremely high game processor in Con Knippel, and you put him next to Isaiah Collier, and all of a sudden, like, these guys are reading the game really quickly.
Yeah.
Like, the ball's flying all over the place. They're generating these advantages that you can do it athletically. You can generate an advantage athletically by being faster, bigger, stronger, whatever, jump higher. Or you can do it by outthinking other guys. And like I look at where Will Hardy has come from, like he started with the Spurs. That was all game processors, right?
Yes.
Like Tony Parker had elite speed.
Yeah.
He did. Also super high IQ. Mm-hmm. Ginobili, good athleticism, but pretty average. Mm-hmm. Super high game processor. Tim Duncan, okay athlete by the time Will Hardy ever saw him. Like good in his prime, but wasn't ever the top athlete in the league. The best game processor maybe we've ever seen.
Yeah.
At that position. Great. That all made sense. Then you go to Boston. Like, the good guys. But the question for Celtics have always been, like, do they even have a top 5 guy on this roster? Like, Tatum's knocking on the door. But, like, no. Jaylen Brown is a legit genius.
Yes.
Jason Tatum, super high IQ. Drew Holiday, super high IQ. Derek White, super high IQ. And then you sprinkle in Kristaps Porzingis, who I think probably has a very mediocre basketball IQ. He's not a great passer. But he makes sense because all these other guys are making decisions, and his decision is, do I shoot?
Yeah.
And then the answer is yes, because you're 7'4". So that's where I think, like, Con Knippel has a ton of value, and for the Jazz specifically, like, I might just want to get smart guys so Will Hardy can run smart guy stuff. And Trey Johnson's lack of playmaking and unhealthy shot diet, which, by the way, applies to Ace Bailey as well, might hint at some lower basketball IQ stuff that they have gotten away with by being able to shoot over people.
Yeah.
But by the way, Con Knippel can also shoot over people, but also has this processor.
And I think that if, like you say, the Jazz just don't have the taste, don't have the heart, the goal to go for another tanking season, like throw Con in there. And like me and you both sort of said that we felt that Lauri Markkanen sort of, even when he was on the court, actually didn't have his foot all the way on the gas. Mm-hmm. Like, the Jazz could totally be a 30 to 40 win team, throwing out Con Knippel and then all these veterans doing their best.
Their best, yeah. If you run it back next year and just said you want to go with your best. Problem is, I think if they run it back, I don't think they try to do their best. I think they try and do exactly what they did last year. Which again, I just don't know if they have the appetite for.
Yeah.
Anyways.
All right, next from Nick T. Does the lottery results change the front office view of how Lowry does or does not fit long term?
Yes, I think it does. Yeah. Quickly, Dalton Knecht, low IQ.
Yeah.
Like, bad IQ player. Yeah. So why the Lakers didn't trust him. Like, that should be a guy who should fit perfectly next to LeBron and Luka, right? Didn't think the game quick enough. Like, he actually has super physical advantages. He's a great athlete. Dalton Connect and is a great shooter. But like, I doesn't think the game well enough. He just doesn't. He doesn't process the game well enough to be on the floor in those situations, even though he's kind of exactly what they needed was another shooter.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about how I think Lowry changes things. Yeah, I think he's a safe bet. And I wonder if you invert your safe bets to being more dangerous bets, which is if Lowry's not going to be your number one guy and you know he's not going to get there, trade him for a guy who at least has a chance to get there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's Jalen Green or Reed Shepherd or whatever it is, the guy who you think has a chance to get there.
Last question, I believe, from Toby. Is there any reason to hold on to anyone older than Kessler? The Jazz now need to be in this same position for another year or two at minimum.
Yeah, the pups can't raise pups term that came out last year. I wonder if you just abandon that.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, did the non-pups raise your pups better last year?
Yeah.
Like, maybe a little. You traded Patty Mills the second you got a chance to, and he was like the high IQ vet that was fun to have around that set a great culture. And the second you could get a second round pick for him, you're like, yes, second rounder. Yeah. All right. So no, I don't think you do.
And this might be terrible to say, but like, this is going to be a terrible analogy, and I'm sorry for it. You have a pup.
Uh-huh.
If he grows up and he can't make it, he isn't strong enough, then that's Cody Williams not being in the league.
Yeah.
Or a pup grows up, he'll eventually be a wolf, and then that's your guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, honestly, okay, I'll do this because I laid it out last night because I was thinking about your article. It's a good article. And again, go read it at kslsports.com. I just laid out the hypotheticals I did for Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga. So if you were to get Reed Shepherd in this conversation, again, maybe you have to put in another asset to get there because Reed was a number 3 overall pick.
Yeah.
But your lineup probably looks something like Reed Shepherd and Isaiah Collier are your point guards. Jalen Green and Bryce Sensabaugh are your shooting guards. Your small forwards are Jonathan Kuminga, Con Knipple, I put at 5. Maybe it's Trey Johnson, whatever. And Cody Williams.
Okay.
Your power forwards are Kyle Filipowski and Taylor Hendricks. Mm-hmm. And your center is Walker Kessler. And I put Danny Wolf from Michigan. He's just a center that's going to get drafted. Backup center is the least valuable position in the NBA. So who cares? Whatever. That's all pups.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I actually think that's far more intriguing. Now, again, I've told you, I love Christmas morning because it's just new stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the only reason I kind of looked at that lineup that I just laid out and was palatable for me versus the idea of just John Collins. And John's awesome.
John is awesome. Yeah.
A great guy, good to have around, played really well last year, but it's just he's not getting you closer to what you're trying to get to if you're the Utah Jazz right now. And I think the question now is to answer this question, is Lowry actually getting you closer to what you hope you're getting to? I don't think he is. Maybe 2 years ago if you win the lottery, or maybe last year if you win the lottery, or maybe this year if you win the lottery. But you didn't.
No.
And he's not getting closer to being a superstar. Mm-mm. Lowry at 28 years old is not going to develop the isolation stuff to build everything around him and become the centrifugal force to have a superstar team. He's just not. No. He's not going to get there. It doesn't happen at that age. And he's never shown it's even close particularly. So maybe I try and see if I can recapture what made Jalen Green the hottest name in the NBA a year and a half or a year ago, late after the trade deadline, that they were this Rockets team has something. There's something cooking there. And they were right. Now it ended up not being Jalen Green and they're moving off of him. Kuminga, same thing. So it's kind of why I'm thinking about it. So I think the lottery result does change how you view these guys. And why you don't necessarily have to say pups can't raise pups. It's I got to figure out which one of these pups are going to survive, period. Yeah. Whether someone's raising them or not.
With that roster you just named, I think that with my article, I sort of did extreme, trying to cut your losses, and then extreme, just running it back, right?
Yeah.
I think what the idea you're presenting is sort of somewhere in the middle.
It's the bridge, yeah.
And also, I think that I'm really liking what you're putting down here because it's also just something new. It's the Jazz get something new to look at next year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I don't think you
that's
lose.
Big.
Look, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks and you win a title with Giannis and Drew and Chris Middleton and Splash Mountain, Brook Lopez, you can't then go on and lose every trade you make and get worse and trade your way out of championship contention.
Yeah.
The Nuggets have probably done this as well, right? And maybe they beat the Thunder, maybe they get back there. But they lose KCP, they lose, who was it 2 years ago? Bruce Brown. You lose these guys, and they've slowly gotten worse. Who cares if the Jazz? You get the worst record in the NBA if you're the Jazz last year. Who cares if you get worse?
Yeah.
If you lose a Lowry trade, who cares?
Yeah.
In all honesty, you're not further away from winning. You're the worst team in the league last year.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
No, don't give him away. This is not a giving away. Jalen Green and Reed Shepherd, even if you have to throw in a first-round pick, which, like, you're not worse off. Fine. Maybe the upside is it's the high-value bet that I'm talking about.
Yes.
And maybe that's the swing you take. And if Jalen Green stinks in 2 years, you're still broke. You're still the worst team in the NBA. Like, okay, fine. I'm dead already. Kick the body. I don't care. Like, that's kind of the epiphany I had. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not selling that I'm not selling anything. The Jazz getting the 5th pick was the worst case scenario.
Yes.
It was bad last night.
Yeah.
I also wonder if it like shakes something loose of like they were holding this draft so preciously and like this model of like future unprotected firsts and all that being the capital that they're going to hold on to. I wonder if it hurts them enough that they say like, we got to stop valuing those the way we did. And it cleared something out of the way. And now you move forward. It's like, how many times did Thomas Edison fail before he figured it out? It's like, maybe that was the failure last night that gets to the next thing of realizing like, okay, that didn't work. What's the next step in this process?
Yeah.
That's the right step. And I think that's where maybe there's some optimism or motivation, and I could really see that happening.
Yeah. All right, I think that's it.
Okay. How long do we go? Do we know?
I don't know.
You don't have your thing over
Yeah.
here. We're doing this differently now than we used to. All right. Next week, we will start on players.
Yes.
I think let's just start with Trey Johnson. That seems to be the hot name.
Yeah.
So let's go Trey Johnson. We'll do a breakdown on him next year, or next week, and maybe we can do Trey Johnson and Con Knippel.
Because we already talked a little bit about Con.
We already talked about him a little bit, and we can talk about both of those guys. So we will do that next week. As always, find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, see Holt Sports, read us at Blue Sky as well. Read all of our coverage at KSLSports.com. I would highly recommend going back and reading Chandler's article from yesterday and all of our coverage. But there will be a lot of it still going forward. And we'll be back with you again next week.